Pao and an extreme speed user
Yeah.
just feels so much stronger than it has before. But it's going to be really exciting to see how both of these teams are making use of a Dragonite Chen Pao combo.
Yeah.
Very different Dragonite Chen Paos. Of course, Joe we saw is using that Assault Vest Dragonite, very similar to Riley Factura, and Alex is running the more classic Choice Band Dragonite. But double inner focus, extreme speed users on Alex Underhill, but not a big deal because there are no Intimidate users on Joe's side either.
Right, we do get this style of the dueling Dragonites here. Kind of like we were talking about, there's the two different ways of playing Dragonite. One is the more offensive, like Terra Normal, Extreme Speed, Choice Band, Inner Focus set. Where that is what Alex will be running. But we're looking at Joe's team first. He's got, like you saw yesterday, the Amoonguss, Urshifu Rapid Strike, King Gambit, Dragonite, Ogerpon, Hearth Flame, and Chen Pao.
Yeah, and Joe is now on an 8-game win streak after going down 2-2 after round 4 yesterday. Has won all 3 of his matches so far today, and is really trying to keep those tournament hopes alive as a 2-times Portland Regional Champion. He would love to take home the 3-peat and make history, but will have to get through Alex Underhill to do so, and has been sort of on the edge of his tournament life for a long time now.
I mean, if you go to 2-2 and you're thinking, okay, what do I have to do to win this tournament? It's probably win out, and that's exactly what Joe has done so far in like exactly a Joe Ugarte kind of style. I think we saw him play very well on stream yesterday for that round 9 match, and it's really cool to see him turning around what a lot of players would consider not the best start. Certainly not an unrecoverable start, as you're seeing he's still here. But, I mean, if anyone can do it, it's someone that won the last 2 iterations of this very event. So really cool to see Joe at this spot too.
Absolutely, but he will be going up against Alex Underhill. Will be trying to stop the Cinderella run from Joe Ugarte. And Alex is running sort of a different look at the heavy priority teams here. Of course, you see double extreme speed users on Dragonite and Entei, and also the Thunderclap Raging Bolt. Crucially, this is one of those safety goggles 3 attacks versions of Raging Bolt, not just the Thunderclap and Draco Meteor or Dragon Pulse version. So it does have some options for that electric typing without having to use the Sucker Punch. And of course, Chen Pao also carrying Sucker Punch. So 4 Pokemon with priority attacks here. And then the Booster Energy Fluttermane, which has fallen off pretty heavily in favor of the choice specs, but Alex is still opting to use the Booster Energy here.
He is. I think that's really cool. I think depending on whether the Booster Energy is the speed or special attack version, it kind of influences how it plays. A lot of times, if the Fluttermane is carrying Icy Wind, that kind of gives away that it's running the plus speed version. But if it's not holding Icy Wind, as you're seeing there, it's Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, Moonblast, and Protect. That could go either way. Like sometimes you might still want the speed just to get that speed advantage, be attacking before something like a Chen Pao. But a lot of times players opt for the more offensively oriented Booster Energy that kind of replaces the choice specs but give you more flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely, and it can be one of those things that maybe it's a kind of a bluff to not have the Icy Wind on it if you're running the Speed Booster Fluttermane, because if I look at that, I'm immediately thinking, yep, that's a special attack boosting Fluttermane.
Yeah.
You just want to be able to protect sometimes, which is especially valuable when you're looking at Joe, who has 2 Sucker Punch users in Chen Pao and King Gambit, as well as plenty of heavy offensive threats. As we are getting ready to get into Game 1 here for Joe versus Alex, and looking at this matchup, really, we've been talking a lot about the Tailwind and how speed control seems to have gone away, and it's probably because almost every Pokemon on the field will have some kind of priority move to ignore the speed tiers.
And you wonder why Farigiraf popped up on the top 12 yesterday as well. It's cool though. I think this is, if not the exact same matchup, a very similar matchup that Joe played in his round 9 match against Adi yesterday. So it'll be cool to see how Joe maybe switches up his strategies, because I do know that Alex and Adi are good friends and have probably talked about this matchup going into day 2. And so if Alex maybe wants to take a different approach than Adi did going into this match, that is an option available to him. But again, if you're Joe, you've played this kind of team a lot. I'm sure you've practiced against the team comp that Alex and Adi are using a lot. So it shouldn't be too much of an advantage at all for Alex.
All right, well, here we are hopping into Game 1 of our Round 13 match. Joe Ugarte versus Alex Underhill. Joe is leading a really powerful combination, the Chen Pao and King Gambit, but that is staring down the Ogerpon, the Wellspring Ogerpon, and the Entei on Alex's side, and that Entei looking really strong right now into both of these Pokemon.
It is. This is a great spot for Entei to be in. It's facing 2 things weak to fire, and 2 physical attackers that really don't want to get burned by Sacred Fire. So if you have the chance to get off some Sacred Fires in this turn, that could pay off really well. This is also a really prime spot for this Dragon Terra on the King Gambit that I believe we're about to see come out from Joe here. This is kind of exactly why you run Dragon Terra, because it resists all of Fire, Water, and Grass, which are the 3 types of Pokemon that the King Gambit is staring down.
Yeah, all 3 types on the field right now.
Exactly, yeah. So a really great defensive Terra here that should allow the King Gambit to get some big attacks off, hopefully without a Sacred Fire burn first.
Yeah, the defensive Terra is nice for resisting damage, but is potentially risking a burn from a Sacred Fire. Alex, however, targets down the Chien-Pao with a Horn Leech as Chien-Pao protects itself, and Entei will be able to connect with the King Gambit with a Sacred Fire. Not a lot of damage.
Ooh.
King Gambit dodges the burn this time, gets a Kowtow Cleave off onto Entei, and that is really big damage on that Pokemon.
That's some huge damage. It's a Black Glasses Kowtow Cleave coming through there. Not the Terra Dark for the damage boost that we saw a lot earlier in the year, but that is still a huge chunk of damage, especially because the Sacred Fire did not burn. That's a really big break for Joe, because now this Entei is easily within range for something like a Sucker Punch from either of these 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, and forces the Follow Me from the Ogerpon, so Ogerpon not able to go on the offensive, trying to protect Entei from any Sucker Punch. Instead, Chien-Pao just firing off an Ice Spinner, another Sacred Fire. Will take Chien-Pao down to Focus Sash, but looks like,
there it is.
This time Alex gets the burn. So yeah, 50-50 sounds about right.
Yeah, accurate.
Chien-Pao will go down at the end of this turn, but not before King Gambit can take out the Ogerpon. And now with no Follow Me support on the field, that Assault Vest Entei is food for King Gambit.
It's food for King Gambit. You do still have the option for Extreme Speed if you want to try and dodge a Sucker Punch, or just make sure you get some kind of attack off, before you get knocked out. That's a nice trade, though. I think going 1 for 2 on Sacred Fire burns is exactly what you might expect, given the odds. And maybe you preferred it on the King Gambit that prior turn to lower the damage from that Kowtow Cleave, but getting Chien-Pao off the field means that there is no longer the option for the Sword of Ruin coming out from Joe, which is nice for Alex because that gives his Pokemon, like this Raging Bolt, more of a defensive cushion. Really good spot for Raging Bolt here, too, I think. The King Gambit is now weak to Dragon, so Draco Meteor surely clears it, and there's no option for the Ogerpon on Joe's end to hit it for what is more than not very effective damage.
Yeah, the Dragon typing, of course, King Gambit loved the Dragon typing so much it decided to terrestrialize into it. Raging Bolt just has that naturally, will be easily able to resist any attacks coming out from the Hearthflame Ogerpon on Joe's side. However, Ogerpon will pick up the KO on that Entei, finally with the Ivy Cudgel. No extreme speeds, no thunderclaps, no sucker punches coming out. There will be the Draco Meteor from the Raging Bolt because of the terrestrialization, picks up that KO, but now Raging Bolt is at -2 special attack, and 2 Pokemon have already gone down for Alex, so that Raging Bolt is stuck on the field at -2 special attack after the Draco Meteor.
It is at -2 special attack, but looking at the 2 Pokemon Joe has left, that's not a huge deal, I would think. Neither the Amoonguss nor the Ogerpon have a way to damage this Raging Bolt significantly, and it is carrying the Safety Goggles item, so this Raging Bolt can kind of just ignore Amoonguss as long as it wants to. Again, you're not doing as much damage because you are at -2 attack, but the Raging Bolt isn't facing a big threat itself right now. I kind of like the non-extreme speed play from Entei there as well, because it kind of forces Joe to either target the Entei with something, which means that Raging Bolt won't be taking 2 attacks, or possibly have to eat a Sacred Fire on the Ogerpon, which would be pretty bad.
Absolutely. Well, the Chien-Pao coming out for Alex is also a really strong Pokemon to threaten both the Hearthflame Ogerpon and the Amoonguss on Joe's side, especially that Amoonguss, the defensive Terra not available. So both the Safety Goggles on Raging Bolt and Chien-Pao making this Amoonguss kind of sketchy here out on the field.
It is. It doesn't have the option to protect itself either, so as soon as Chien-Pao wants to go for something like an Ice Spinner into that slot, the Amoonguss will have to take it at full force.
Oh, and Joe is afraid of the Chien-Pao, double targets into the Chien-Pao, hits the Ivy Cudgel into the Protect, Raging Bolt's Thunderbolt into Amoonguss, just sort of tickling the mushroom, but gets a paralysis on it. That could be pretty big, preventing a Pollen Puff in the future, but Joe trying to just pick up the KO onto the Chien-Pao, knows that he's going to have to take an Ice Spinner at some point. Might as well just try to focus down that Pokemon and get it off the field and not try to get fancy.
I think that's really smart from Alex, too. A lot of players can train their Amoonguss to survive something like an Ice Spinner from this Chien-Pao, but if you're able to get that Thunderbolt damage off, even though it is very meager damage, that could be the difference between Ice Spinner KOing Amoonguss and not. And in this case, that's kind of exactly what you need. Like, if you're Alex here, KOing Amoonguss in one shot means that you're only taking an attack from the Ugarte. Your Focus Sash will protect you, and you will be able to get off one more attack into that slot, which will ease Raging Bolt's win condition at the end of the game.
Absolutely, and Chin Pao now is going to terrestrialize into the Ghost typing. Here comes that Ice Spinner with the chip on Amoonguss.
Oh!
2 hit points. Raging Bolt just barely not enough damage to get the chip that Chin Pao needed. Joe holds on for dear life with that Citrus Berry. Ivy Cudgel from the Ugarte coming out onto the Chin Pao. A Draco Meteor, though, will finish it off. Even at -2, that's big damage coming out from the Raging Bolt. And now, Chin Pao at basically its Focus Sash. Another Ivy Cudgel will pick up that KO. Raging Bolt now at -4, though.
Yeah.
Not going to be doing a whole lot of damage, but probably Alex just has enough here.
And another really smart play from Alex there, too. If the Ice Spinner does KO, the Draco Meteor just gets redirected into the Ugarte. But since you covered the possible non-KO, Draco Meteor, even at -2, enough to pick up the Amoonguss after that Citrus Berry. And now you have your -4 Raging Bolt facing down this Ugarte, but at the same time, the Ugarte is not carrying Horn Leech. So any damage that's dealt will stick. And I don't think this Ugarte has the option to even 2-hit KO this Raging Bolt, thanks to the Dragon typing. So even though you're now at -6 special attack, I think 1 or 2 more attacks should easily do the trick. Not Ivy Cudgel doing very pitiful damage.
Yeah, definitely enough right there. And just finishing off with the 100% accurate Thunderbolt and the critical hit too. I want to shout out, Alex went for the Sucker Punch on Ugarte that last turn from the Chin Pao, which I think is actually a really smart play, making sure you get damage off onto the Ugarte without risking, an Ice Spinner into a spiky shield. So
very true.
It's a really, I saw that at first and I was like, why aren't you just Ice Spinnering?
Right.
It's like, oh, but if Joe had just clicked spiky shield. So extremely heads up play from Alex to identify that Chin Pao needs to not take any damage, and maybe there's an out if Joe tries to spiky shield and you give him that free damage.
Yeah, and there's just a series of very smart decisions from Alex in the mid to late game of this battle. Again, you didn't get the burn on that first Sacred Fire, and you took a lot of damage from Kowtow Cleave, but that didn't stop Alex. He knew that the Follow Me option was there, and getting the Sacred Fire into Chin Pao in combination with that burn was really important in kind of clearing the way for the rest of the Pokemon there, because once the Chin Pao went down, there's actually really nothing left on Joe's side that could really threaten this Raging Bolt, especially considering the King Gambit was already a Dragon type and could just get knocked out by a Draco Meteor. So I think getting Chin Pao off the field being a priority for Alex, smart decision to kind of make way for this Raging Bolt to win in the very end.
I actually think that the way that Alex led and held his two back Pokemon in the back was so smart this game.
Yeah.
The Entei and the Ugarte Wellspring form, definitely forcing the Dragon Terra from King Gambit, and then being able to focus down the Chin Pao as well from that Joe had led. By forcing the Dragon Terra onto King Gambit, you immediately take that out of contention against this Raging Bolt because you make it weak to the Draco Meteor. And then Joe just happened to have 2 Pokemon in the back that couldn't do anything about it. So really just baiting that Terra out of the King Gambit early with the Sacred Fire. Not baiting, forcing the Terra out of the King Gambit with that Sacred Fire threat. Really good play there from Alex to make sure that he could go 1-0, up one game in this set.
I think importantly, taking the Terra option away from Amoonguss there was big. The Amoonguss at the very end could have done some damage, not actual damage, more like psychological damage, with some Pollen Puffs and Spores, had it been able to dodge Ice Spinner damage with the Terra Water. But that is not an option Joe had at his disposal at that first game, and it is not currently an option because the Amoonguss is not yet on the field. Urshifu and Ugarte the lead of choice into Alex's Dragonite and Ugarte.
Yeah, both players are mixing things up here. The Scarf Urshifu out on the field now for Joe alongside the Hearthflame Ugarte up against the Wellspring Ugarte and the Choice Band Dragonite. So big damage being threatened from that Dragonite, even though there is no Chin Pao out on the field. Neither the Hearthflame Ugarte or the Urshifu really want to be taking too many extreme speeds, or even honestly just an outrage here. Feels pretty safe from this Dragonite.
Yeah, I think it looks like the only outrage resist on Joe's side is that King Gambit, but because it's not holding the Assault Vest, it might be trained to be a bit more indexed into attack than possibly bulk. So even a King Gambit doesn't really want to be taking a big outrage. Outrage locking in on turn 1 feels a little bit risky. Like maybe not something you want to kind of rely on off the bat. Instead, we're going for the Terra Normal here from the Dragonite, which indicates it might just be trying to fire off some big extreme speeds right away.
Yeah, the Terra Normal from Dragonite, the Spiky Shield from the Hearthflame Ugarte. the follow me from the wellspring Ogerpon. Everything is setting up to see where this extreme speed is going to go. And Alex is correctly identifying that this Scarf Urshifu cannot protect. So that's easy damage, guaranteed damage. Gets big damage onto the Urshifu, but Ogerpon also taking a lot from that U-turn. Scarf Urshifu sees a Wellspring Ogerpon on the field, and you have to assume that U-turn's coming out. So Alex knew that he was going to be taking that damage and giving a free switch into Qian Pao now.
The Qian Pao comes out, it's like in a fine spot offensively, but unfortunately for Joe, that Sword of Ruin does actually apply to his partner as well. So if Dragonite does opt to go for extreme speed into that Ogerpon slot, it will be taking the boosted damage. We still have the follow me option from either player as well. The Ogerpon on Alex's end, looking like it might want to protect this Dragonite for something like a Sacred Sword coming out from Qian Pao. Kingambit coming in here, hoping to possibly absorb an extreme speed.
Yeah, now that Dragonite is locked into extreme speed, you can just go ahead and switch in your normal type resist, which is the Kingambit. Ogerpon also has the ability to redirect attacks. No terrestrialization coming out from Joe. Had the option of going Ghost on the Qian Pao, but correctly identifying that he does not need to do that just yet. Gets the Kingambit taking a little bit of chip from that extreme speed, taking it much better than the Ogerpon would, and finally gets the KO on the Wellspring Ogerpon with that Sacred Sword as Entei coming back out here.
I think importantly, the Kingambit not being 2-hit KO'd even by that Sword of Ruin, Terra Normal Choice Band Extreme Speed is really important. That means that Alex will have to double target it if you want to knock it out this turn. And you also, the Qian Pao coming in, it does not take its Focus Sash, or his Focus Sash is not broken, also will be demanding a double target if you want to knock it out. But
if you can even do damage.
Right, exactly. The Ghost Terra is an option on the field here. You would dodge extreme speed damage, and you would no longer be weak to the Sacred Fire, which could be a cool option here for Joe.
Yeah, absolutely a great time for that Ghost Terra on the Qian Pao. Also would force that Dragonite to switch out, so no threat here, and Alex having to sort of catch up on the momentum loss of locking in to that Choice Banded extreme speed. There is the now Ghost-type Qian Pao out on the field, immune to an extreme speed from either Entei or from the Dragonite. Entei goes for the extreme speed, will be able to dodge Sucker Punches because of that, but deals basically no damage to the Kingambit. This Dragonite, though, is starting to pick up real damage on Kingambit as Qian Pao goes for the Sucker Punch. No damage into the Entei. Kingambit also Sucker Punched. Oh no. Alex learned some things from Joe's set yesterday and completely dodges all the damage. It seemed like a great turn for Joe, great opportunity to go for the Ghost Terra, but by double extreme speeding, those Sucker Punches could not do anything.
Yeah, unfortunate turn for Joe there. It was a really smart play from Alex just to make sure that no Sucker Punch shenanigans came out. A double Sucker Punch into Entei probably KOs it, given the boost from the Black Glasses and the Sword of Ruin, but not the case here. Sacred Sword actually going straight into Dragonite, though not enough for the KO, importantly, and Entei does get off his Sacred Fire into Qian Pao. Will not be done enough to bring it down to its Focus Sash because it did Terra, but it does still get the burn. So now this Qian Pao will be at only firing at 50% of its max power.
Yeah, the Qian Pao is now burned, and that's really terrible for Joe because you really want to be able to deal a lot of damage with that Qian Pao. Otherwise, this Pokemon, as a burned Pokemon, it can now sit on the field and not, like Alex doesn't care about it. Instead, Qian Pao's just decreasing the defense of whatever Qian Pao's partner is.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Joe at this point, maybe you just want the Qian Pao to get knocked out, so you're not inflicting Sword of Ruin on your own partners.
Whoa.
Double Protect does fail for Kingambit, so it should be knocked out by an extreme speed from Dragonite here.
Yep, this Dragonite's extreme speed will be able to pick up the KO onto Kingambit, which means that it's just going to be this Qian Pao trying to deal damage back into the Dragonite and the Entei. Even burned, that Sacred Sword will be plenty to pick up the minuscule amounts of hit points left on that Dragonite, but the damage has been done. Picked up the KO onto the Kingambit and dealt a lot of damage to the Scarf Urshifu in the back, and now this Stomping Tantrum will pick up the KO on the Qian Pao, which means we just have Scarf Urshifu and the Hearthflame Ogerpon for Joe. These are two Pokemon that are extremely strong and capable of making a comeback here, but Joe's also got to be worried about what do you lock into, especially with a Raging Bolt in the back.
Yeah, Raging Bolt is going to make it a little bit tough for Urshifu to lock into Surging Strikes here. Obviously, against this Fire-type Entei, that's what you want to be using. But if you have to be Surging Strikesing the Raging Bolt, that's not going to be much damage at all, especially considering the Ogre Pawn next to the Raging Bolt, again, doesn't have a great way to damage it. We saw the Ivy Cudgel do just about a quarter of the Raging Bolt's HP in that first game. So if you do want to clear out the Entei with Surging Strikes, you have to be really worried about this Raging Bolt going forward as well.
Well, the Follow Me will protect the Urshifu from a Thunderclap. Entei's Extreme Speed will connect instead onto the Ogre Pawn, and Surging Strikes picks up the KO on this Entei. But that means that Raging Bolt did not go for the Thunderclap. If it's targeting down that Ogre Pawn with a Draco Meteor, would completely open up this Urshifu for a Thunderclap to finish off the game.
It would, especially because I don't believe the Urshifu can Terra itself. So yeah, because Chien-Pao did use that Terastallization. Draco Meteor comes through and does KO this Ogre Pawn. Raging Bolt is now in a position where a single Thunderbolt or Thunderclap should be able to KO this Urshifu and send Alex to 11 wins on the weekend.
Absolutely, the Urshifu trying it desperately, but here comes the Thunderclap, and that's claps in the crowd for Alex as he defeats Joe Ugarte to become 11-2 heading into our final round of Swiss.